This is the playthrough of my 2D game created in GameMaker. So my game has one room, but the room is, as you can see, quite long. So yeah, we'll start the game. So I have a sort of main menu screen here with the title of the game created by me, and then I have a start button and a quit button. So these buttons you can hover over and then they highlight the buttons, and then obviously quit will quit the game, and the start button will send you straight to the main room. So I have it so that the game enters full screen mode as soon as you enter, and then you see the player sprite here, and then you've got control, so using A and D to control the player, spacebar is to jump, escape is to pause the game here, and then the objective of this game is to collect these coins that are scattered throughout the game world to increase your score, which is up here in the top right. Oh. So, we'll just play the game. So the egg character rolls when you move them, so you can see I've added a little animation there for that to happen. And then the coins disappear and make a noise when you pick them up. So I've created these platforms, I guess, out of clouds here to add a little bit more depth to the game world. So you can go up, all the way up here, and then I have all these coins here, and then it takes you back down to the ground. So I'll just continue playing the rest of the game here. So I do have this maximum score set up here, and that's the maximum amount of coins that there are in the game world. So if by chance you were to, for example, not jump up onto this cloud here and were to go straight down here, you would miss all these coins and you wouldn't be able to get the maximum score in the game. The same goes for this coin up here, but we'll just go collect the rest of these coins first. So if I were to jump straight down here, get those 3 coins, I'd be missing 1, but we'll grab that, and we'll go down here. So you can't jump back up to that. And then if you press escape to go to the pause menu, you can press X again, which takes you back to the main menu, and then from there you can quit the game. So this is the game room. Like I said before, it's just the one room, but it's quite large. So I've got the camera, which is defined by this box right here, which follows the player character throughout the game world. I mean, obviously you saw that through the in the playthrough, but that'll take you all the way down to the end of the game here. Now, I could make this larger if I wanted. I could add a little door that takes you to another room, but given the time restraints, I just made the one large room. And then there's also the main menu room, which is separate, not full screen. And then here we have the workspace, where I've got all of the assets, all of the sprites, code, and everything. So we'll start with the egg. So I've created 3 different sprites, 3 different animations for the egg. I've got its running animation, or like the movement. So you can see all of these frames here. It's running at 15 frames per second. If I press play, you can see the egg just rolls along. All of these egg assets here I created myself. They're all original, as I put there in a little note. The idle animation is just the egg kind of bouncing up and down a little bit. 5 frames per second, I wanted that one to be a little bit slower. And then the jump animation is just 1 frame. So when you jump, it changes the egg's mouth from a little smile into a little circle. And that one's 15 frames per second to match the running speed. And then here we have the code for the player object, which I've given the sprite of the idle sprite. So I have a create event here, which defines speed as 4. You can increase this or decrease this if you want the player to move faster or slower. And then x speed and y speed equal to 0, but those change depending on certain variables, which I have defined here. So I have the variable x direction, which checks to see whether D or A is pressed. And then jump checks to see whether the spacebar is pressed. And then on the ground means that it's just a variable that says like the player is currently on the ground or up against a wall, which I will get to in a bit. And then here we have x direction. So if D is pressed, the sprite will be facing to the right. If A is pressed, it will be facing to the left. So this is kind of just like changing the player's direction based on the key pressed. And then this here is changing. So if the player is moving at a speed greater than 0, it changes the sprite to the running sprite, which means that the egg will roll as it's moving. Otherwise, the player sprite is idle. And then if they're jumping, obviously set the sprite to the jumping sprite and change the speed to -15. You can change this value if you want the player to jump faster or slower, but I found -15 to be a good in between. And then this block of code here is for collision with the walls, which I will cover in just a minute. But basically, if the player meets the wall, then speed equals 0, so they stop moving, and that goes for x speed and y speed. And then here we have a collision event with the coin. So when you collide with the coin, it plays a sound, which I have, I believe, just over to the right here. Yeah, there's the coin sound. And then it also destroys the instance, so removes the coin from the room. And then I also have this, which was really good for playtesting, which you just press the R key and it resets the player position to the start of the game, just to test the platforming and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, that's the egg here. I have some tutorials that I used, just noted up at the top there. And then the coin, I have its sprite here. This one kind of rotates around like that. I've got the sound here. That's the sound that plays when you pick up the coin. And then simply just a destroy instance. When you destroy it, your score increases by 1. And then let's see. Here are all of our sprites. So this is the background. I've got the source there. This I just made it the size of the room, which is 1000 pixels by 600 pixels, and then I tiled the background so that it would repeat over the whole room. And then here is my tile sets that I used to create the game world. So obviously these would be all the ground textures. I've got some trees, bushes, grass that I've used to create a little bit of vibrance in the world. And then I made them into tile sets, so it was easy to come over here, and now I'm forgetting how to do it. I believe it was here, ground. Yeah, and then you can use this to paint in the world. So I could extend these pieces here if I wanted to. But yes, these are all the tile sets I used. So grass, bushes, trees, and the clouds over here. So I used these clouds here as the blocks that you can step on. I like those ones there. And then I used these clouds with little faces on them as just like background sprites that you cannot interact with, so you can just jump right through them. Okay, next I have all of these, like the buttons, the title screen. These buttons, they go 1 frame per second, and they flash like a dark gray and a light gray, depending if you're hovering over them or not. This I was able to achieve just by I believe it's here, mouse enter, image index 1, which is this one, and then mouse leave image index 0, which is that one. And then this image speed 0 means that the image is unanimated, so that when you hover over it or mouse enter, it changes to image 1, and leave is image 0. And then left button pressed is go to room 1. And then for the quit button, it's the exact same thing, except that when left pressed, it ends the game. And then down here, this is just an object with a sprite, not interactable. It's just a thanks for playing. Reach the end of the game. Same thing for this, and same thing for this. That's just the instructions that I have at the start of the game. What else? This is the sound. So the music that plays in the background, you can hear it there. And this was really easy to do. You just have a create event that plays the sound with a priority of 1,000, so it plays over everything else. Value is true, which means that the audio plays. And then the last thing here, well, let's see the wall. The wall object is here. This was just a, 32 by 32 square that I gave slight opacity, just so that when I'm in the room here and I go to my walls layer here, I can toggle it on or off just to see where the walls are in my game world. So you can see that the walls are on all of the ground elements as well as all the clouds, although it's harder to see. You can see down at the end here, same thing. There's a wall here, and then there's nothing in the object here, but if I go back to my player object, and then I go to my step, you can see that OWall is referenced in the collision block of code. And then if I go to these blocks of code here, these are the camera and the game object. So the game object is what I used to create the pause screen and the menu screen as well. So this I got from a tutorial, which I put right here. Tutorial for the pause screen, and this is a tutorial for the camera as well, which I'll get to in just a minute. So the score set to 0, because you obviously start with 0 points, and then the menu, this actually didn't end up working. I guess I just kept it there for reference. This first user event here is it deactivates all instances in the game world when you press escape, so the pause button, which is right here. So if you press escape, it toggles pause, and then toggle pause equals to 0. But then it turns pause to true and then to false when you press the button again. So that's for escape key. And then for the X key, toggles the event toggle menu, which is also right here, set to 0. And then it takes you to the menu room, which is this one here. And then I have this draw GUI event here. So if paused, so if you've pressed the escape key, it draws the word paused, press X to return to menu, and then all of these, saying the background is black, the font color is white, send the middle, center. And then here, this is in the game world, so you've got your score, max score, and then this, I believe, is connected to the coin object here. Not this one. Here. So the score plus 1. So that connects to here, and the score increases every time you hit a coin. And then for the camera object, I've got the create event here, which creates the camera with a width of 640 and a height of 360. So that fits over here in the room. It's a pretty decently sized space for the camera. And then it sets the window to full screen. And then the step event here, this is mapping the camera to the player's movement, so it clamps to the player, and the room width and the room height as well, so that the camera cannot go out of the bounds of the room. And then this and pretty much everything else other than this top part here I got from parts from these two tutorials here. But this creates a parallax effect on the background, which kind of, if you take a look here, it creates a nice, sort of like an illusion almost. But you can see that the background moves sort of independently of the game world, ever so slightly, and you can change this value with these numbers here. So I could increase this if I wanted the effect to be stronger, decrease it if I didn't want the effect at all. But otherwise, that pretty much makes up the whole game. I did originally intend to include enemies, sort of like in Super Mario Brothers, how you have the Goombas or the Koopas that you can jump on and you can like defeat the enemies, their sprite would disappear. I tried to include something like that, but it was quite difficult to give it its own, to give the enemies their own sort of artificial intelligence in a way. So I scrapped that idea. I just decided to use coins as the main scoring function. I originally intended for the enemies to inflict damage upon the player, so you would have a health bar that appears up at maybe the top left or just under the score. Every time you receive damage, it chips away a little bit at the health bar. But I didn't have enough time to implement that effectively in my game. But yeah, if I were to do this again in the future, I would make a bigger game world. I would include, like I said before, maybe a door or a passageway at the end that takes you to another room, maybe a different sort of world in the game. So this one is obviously like an overworld, sort of an Earth type place. Maybe it takes you to a different kind of world. But yeah, I would create more rooms. I would try my best to include enemies in the future, because I feel like it's sort of a very one-sided game. You are the only sentient thing in this world, just this egg. It would be nice to have some sort of enemy, or maybe even an NPC that you can talk to, something like that. Yeah, Game Maker was really good at keeping everything organized. I found I was able to, put my sprites over here. I was able to put my player over here, my coin here. I was able to keep everything really organized, and it really helped to, especially these tile things. I was able to just select that, put a bush there if I wanted, or place some grass over here, just like that. It's really, really handy, really organized, and I think that was the thing I enjoyed the most about using Game Maker. Is I had a lot of creative freedom when it came to making my game world. I was able to, I can put a cloud anywhere in the sky if I want, and that cloud will just stay there. Then I can, add a wall here. I can place a wall there so that the player won't be able to interact with that. I thought it was really, really user-friendly, really easy to work with. And I look forward to working with Game Maker in the future. I think it's a really fun program to use. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it. I've covered all of the sprites, all of my animation, all of the code that makes up the game. Yeah,